Euromaxx highlights. And here's your host, Anne O'Donnell.
Thanks for joining us here at our Brandenburg Gate studios in Berlin for the highlights of the week. Let's have a look at our top 3 stories. Ambitious ideas, a Russian muse for fashion bloggers turned celebrity designer. Curiouser and curiouser, the adventures of Alice in Wonderland still fascinate. And festival fever, folk festivals in Germany like the Schützenfest in Hanover attract millions. Well, Paris is bouncing back to reality after Fashion Week wrapped up there on Friday. There were lots of extraordinary creations on display, and we picked out one highlight from the electro-couture show. Now, many bloggers are hailing the new Russian designer Ulyana Sergeyenko as fashion royalty. She has developed a very decadent and magical style with her label, and she definitely knows what makes the fashionistas tick as a former model, a blogger, and a haute couture client herself.
A fashion show by Ulyana Sergeyenko really breaks norms. Miniskirts are seldom seen. Long dresses accentuate waistlines of models wearing princess shoes and elegant headpieces. It's fashion from another era, divorced from current trends.
I think that inside I had a lot of things to tell about, you know, and for this I just started to do clothes by myself.
This is the first season 33-year-old Sergeyenko has been able to present her collection as part of the official haute couture calendar. She sees it as a great honor, and she's the only Russian designer showing her creations in Paris.
Paris only stands to profit from interesting labels from other countries, as long as the designers make fashion that appeals to the international market. We don't want any kind of traditional national dress, but fashion that has worldwide potential. And the Haute Couture Commission, made up of Parisian haute couture designers, decided that Ulyana Sergeyenko is able to play in this league.
Her label is just 4 years old. As the wife of a Russian billionaire, Sergeyenko is also an avid follower of haute couture at the Paris fashion shows, such as the Dior show she attended on Monday. Sergeyenko grew up in rural Kazakhstan and developed an interest in fashion while at school.
I was loving to wear something strange or different, you know, because we had to wear the special uniform for Soviet pupils, and I always tried to break the rules. Yeah.
With her quirky street style, Sergeyenko has been a favorite of the photographers for years. She's inspired many fashion bloggers and fashionistas.
I think she has great style, you know. I feel like I first became aware of her when I'd go to some of the shows, and I'd ask, like, I remember asking Jean-Paul, like, who is that woman? Like, she's so amazing. So I think it's like she has an amazing style herself, and she knows how to wear clothes.
She has a very particular style, and I think she used it very well in her career, that she transcended that style she has and she was having on the streets through her line, because she always looks impeccable, and we can see the reflection of her style in her collections. And of course it adds a little bit of more popularity when you are seen all over the streets and you go to the shows, and she is such a fabulous woman. You cannot see her when she enters the room.
Only the best is good enough for the designer's own Paris fashion show. A location near the Eiffel Tower, champagne for the guests, and an army of professionals to dress and style the 39 models. The young businesswoman has about 100 employees, 60 of whom work in her Moscow haute couture studio. English hat designer Stephen Jones took part in the current collection.
She's one of the very real few real couturiers who, I mean, at her show, of course, there's the press and there's friends, but there's a lot of private clients here too. She has certain things of dreamlike from another time, but somehow it's very modern. I mean, if it wasn't modern, she wouldn't have the hundreds of clients she has today.
Her celebrity fans include Italian actress Ornella Muti, American performance artist Tita Fontees, and American actress Michelle Rodriguez.
I wear a lot of her clothes in my day-to-day life, and I'm a big fan of her style. It's so whimsical but glamorous and very kind of sweet and really feminine shapes.
She has a very peculiar attention to the details, to the fabrics. She creates fabrics. She has always a hint to her roots. She keeps the Russian roots alive, and the Russian roots are wonderful.
Her haute couture show in Paris is a dream come true for Uliana Sashenko. She's gone from consumer to creator of fashion, from the front row seats to the runway. The concept seems to work.
Well, one of the most famous children's books in the world turns 150. Alice in Wonderland tells the story of a little girl who falls into a rabbit hole and stumbles upon a magical world full of strange creatures. Well, it was written by Lewis Carroll and it continues to fascinate its readers worldwide. The city of Oxford was the birthplace and the inspiration behind the book, hence the annual celebrations there. Let's have a look at the highlights from Alice's Day.
Scenes like these in the prestigious city of Oxford can only mean one thing. It's Alice's Day. The annual celebration of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland is always popular, but this year it was a big one. Fans from all over the world took part in some 40 events in the city.
She likes to explore, a bit like me.
You know how books can get to you, and when you finish, you're not actually finished with them. They're growing like a seed in your soul.
It's just wonderfully absurd. It's a beautiful tradition as well. Like the story itself and the history of the book is wonderful, but it's absurd, it's fun. There's so many people doing the same thing. So many silly people doing the same thing.
Oxford has been celebrating Alice's Day since 2002. The city was the birthplace of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. Historian Mark Davies conducts Alice Walks, showing visitors where author Lewis Carroll once lived and how he was inspired to write the children's classic right here in Oxford. Carroll was working as a mathematics professor at the renowned Christ Church College when he first told the story to the Dean's daughter, Alice Liddell. That was July 4th, 1862. She was so enthralled by the tale that she asked him to write it down. 3 years later, the story was published with illustrations by Sir John Tenniel. Alice's Adventures in Wonderland was an immediate hit.
The book had instant appeal, and one reason I think is because there was nothing like it. I mean, it was just completely different to any other story written for children. Most of the children's stories up until that time had been kind of preaching, really. They've been trying to teach a moral lesson. Alice has this dark side, doesn't it? I mean, a lot of dark side, actually. And children love that. You know, so I think this is the first book, really, to do both of those things, to explore the kind of a slightly sinister world of a child and one which adults can actually relate to.
In London, the Victoria and Albert Museum of Childhood is running a special exhibition dubbed the Alice Look to mark the 150th anniversary of that first publication. The book has been translated into 174 languages and the illustrations have been regularly updated. The exhibition shows how Alice's Adventures in Wonderland impacted more than the world of literature.
So there's fantastic marketing on the part of the editors, but particularly Carroll himself. So he's really open to new ways of promoting his work. So when somebody comes along saying, oh, we've got this biscuit tin that we want to have Alice on, is that okay? And he says not only is that okay, but he wants to have loads himself to give to his friends.
The marketing measures paid off. The Alice Look even entered the fashion world, complete with trademark apron. And even today, designers are still finding inspiration in the characters of the story.
It's huge and ongoing and actually really extraordinarily unusual. A, for a literary character to really influence fashion in such a way, but B, the fact that it's still going on a century and a half later, and more than ever, really. I mean, it's that combination of always looking good with that kind of not being particularly fussed about how she looks and going out and having these adventures. So she is a real kind of contemporary role model as well, I think.
Back in Oxford, Will Brooker is also at the Alice's Day celebrations. He's written a book about the role of Alice in popular culture. He considers Alice's Adventures in Wonderland one of the most important works of British literature, comparable to Shakespeare.
Different decades, different generations have interpreted it in their own individual way, almost projecting their own meanings onto it. Like in the 1930s, you started to get a psychoanalytic reading. People assuming there must be something hidden beneath the surface, something kind of sinister, something nightmarish rather than dreamlike. 1960s, the subculture which became interested in psychedelic drugs assumed that Lewis Carroll must have been taking those drugs because the experience he describes is similar to what they were experiencing with LSD and so on, and mushrooms. So it's like different periods find their own Alice and their own Wonderland.
Whether the success story is down to perfect marketing or simply the dream of a perfect childhood is impossible to say. But whatever it is, a century and a half on, it's clearly still working.
I'm sorry, I'm really late. Goodbye.
Well, German folk festivals can be a rather wild affair, complete with dirndls and lederhosen-clad dancers on the tables. The folk festivals like Oktoberfest are so popular, they've even been exported all over the world, from Canada to Brazil and the US. Now, there are many other kinds of folk festivals celebrated right here in Germany every year as well. Millions of tourists come to join in the fun. Let's have a look at the Schützenfest, or Marksmanship Festival, that just took place in Hanover.
When more than 10,000 people march and dance through the streets of Hanover, it must be the annual Marksman's Festival. Some 200,000 onlookers have gathered despite temperatures of around 37 degrees Celsius. The 10-day event is reportedly the largest of its kind worldwide. Lisa Marie Müller is festival queen this year. She won the 2015 women's shooting contest.
Everyone sticks together. When you enter the square in uniform, it's like one big family. It's unbelievable.
Back in the 19th century, marksmen's associations were politically active citizens' militia. Today, they're just sports clubs and subject to Germany's strict gun laws. The Hanover Festival has a 500-year-long tradition. It's a huge draw for locals.
German festivals always have an air of coziness about them. Here you can just be yourself, and for a short time you can throw all your cares to the wind.
Sascha Sabo is a sociologist, and he's written several books on German festivals. There are almost 1,000 such events in Germany. Many have a religious origin, and some date back over 1,000 years. They feature local costumes, and guests enjoy beer or wine. Food is served, and there are funfair attractions. There's music and dance like elsewhere, but some features are typically German, like swaying to the music. And whether they take place in large cities or small villages, they all fulfill one function.
They create a feeling of community. It's very important for each individual who takes part in the events to feel that they belong to a larger entity.
Munich's Oktoberfest is the most famous German beer bash by far, and the largest worldwide. It attracts over 6 million visitors every year, and it's made Bavarian dirndls, lederhosen, and beer synonyms for traditional German culture. Many festivals celebrate the seasons, like the annual Tree Blossom Festival in Werder near Berlin. Hamburg pays tribute to its seafaring roots with a harbor festival. while wine-growing regions also have their own special festivities. Back in Hanover, the merrymaking continues for 10 days. For many, the event brings back memories of family outings, first love, ice cream, and candy.
It's pure fun. It's carrying on a tradition.
We just came to have a good time and watch the events.
And have fun.
And for Lisa Marie Müller and her fellow club members, it's the social highlight of the year.
It's exceptional. You dress up in your fancy uniform every day and stand out in the crowd.
Music, entertainment, and a beer or two. A great way to relax and forget your troubles.
Well, Euromaxx went on tour to visit one of Europe's most breathtaking UNESCO World Heritage sites, Venice and its lagoon. The floating city is situated in the Veneto region of northeast Italy and has World Cultural Heritage status because the whole city is an extraordinary architectural masterpiece. Works of some of the world's greats can be found there as well, and the mode of transport is generally water taxis or the romantic gondolas.
You can take a leisurely ride on a gondola or speed things up by taking a vaporetto. Millions of tourists flock to Venice each year to see centuries-old palaces, the canals, and the 400 or more bridges, such as the famous Rialto. Napoleon is said to have called the Piazza San Marco the drawing room of Europe. Italian architect Silvia Raffaella sees unique challenges here for her profession.
Look at this, it's wonderful. From aesthetical point of view, of course, we live inside the beauty, the history. So architecture in Venice has a different meaning from the rest of the world. Because, of course, mainly we have to preserve, we have to transform.
The entire city is a masterpiece of art and architecture on 118 islands. In 1987, it was declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site. For centuries, Venice has retained its originality, inspiring countless artists and architects the world over.
Cities earn the World Heritage title when they're extraordinary in some way, when they have great significance. Venice, with its many islands and lagoons, is so exceptional, the World Heritage list would simply be incomplete without it.
But Venice is facing enormous challenges. Floods are occurring more and more often, while every year the sandy ground underneath the buildings gives way just a bit more. In a bid to save Venice, the city launched the Muse project in 2003. Set for completion in 2018, it foresees moving barriers that can seal off the lagoon when the sea level rises by 1.10 meters. The daunting feat of engineering has UNESCO support. Another problem is mass tourism. More than 20 million people visit the city every year. But many Venetians are moving away, endangering Venice's originality and very identity. The city is at risk of becoming one big museum.
The World Heritage Committee can't tell Venice what to do, but it has great symbolic influence. It can pressure the city to take action, for instance, to draft management plans to regulate the numbers of tourists allowed in and the number of ships that can dock. And if the city doesn't do it, the World Heritage Committee can put Venice on its red list of endangered World Heritage sites. That's a big symbolic step.
To make sure that doesn't happen, the city drafted a special tourism concept for every district. It involves steering the visitors away from the historic city center to outlying areas of artistic and cultural interest. The authorities work together with the private sector to develop the management plan.
The tourism experts are involved, the administration, the business sector, and the owners of various buildings. They're all working together to find solutions for the city. First and foremost, it has to be kept livable for its residents, in spite of the World Heritage title, and in spite of all the tourists who come to Venice.
The World Heritage status requires Venice to take good care of itself. Everyone, both resident and visitor, has an interest in preserving the city's beauty and character so it can cast its spell on generations to come.
Well, Berlin Fashion Week has just finished up in the German capital, and this time the 2015 fashion designers went digital with their creations. There was an IT couture theme coursing through the catwalks this week. Designers were busy making smart wearables wearable. Electro-couture has enormous growth potential for the fashion industry. Let's have a look at their creations.
Bright ideas for tomorrow's fashion. A coat with a digital display, an illuminated ball gown, or LED lights woven into fabric. At Berlin Fashion Week, events like the exhibition IT Couture and the lecture series Fashion Tech have been bringing together technology and fashion.
It's opening up whole new opportunities for fashion and how it's made. Fashion can do and express more, as you can see from the interactive clothes. It's like science fiction. One day, I imagine I'll be able to change the color of my dress to fit my mood.
For the past 4 years, Berlin textile designer Veronika Aumann has been working to make ideas like that reality. She's designed a coat that can function as a screen. Aumann has been collaborating with Germany's prestigious Fraunhofer Institute. The challenge is to ensure the fabric meets the demands of technology and fashion.
The vision is that it should feel like a t-shirt, really light and comfortable to touch. That I can fold it and wad it up in a corner, and yet the resolution matches a Retina smartphone display.
But it'll take about 10 years to achieve that vision. Aumann uses ordinary fabric to create the foundation the Fraunhofer Institute can build on. One requirement, the fabric has to be sufficiently translucent. The conductors will be woven into the fabric later. For now, there are just rudimentary prototypes.
I would like to integrate the technology in the fabric and enable the creation of a new material.
Berlin blogger Kiki Albrecht writes the random noise. She's been observing the fusion of technology and fashion for years.
I do believe that technology can help to simplify our lives. It always plays an important role. But in fashion, it has to bow to aesthetic concerns.
High-tech fashion is also making an appearance on the runway at Berlin Fashion Week. At Kilian Kerner's show, models are wearing jewelry made with a 3D printer. They're the work of Berlin jewelry designers from Void Studio. With 3D printing, you can create forms that would be almost impossible to achieve with conventional means.
I think that they're the perfect accompaniment to classical things, as a contrast to break it up. And it was really lovely that they could pick up on my textures in another way and put the icing on the cake.
Above all, technology in fashion is mainly intended to serve a purpose. This jacket can give an attacker an electric shock. And this one can send out an emergency signal. Veronika Aumann's Screenstoff is intended to act as an interactive screen, but the manufacture of this prototype still runs some 20,000 euros, and it's not even washable yet.
A big hurdle is making the design suitable for everyday use. The semiconductors make that very difficult. If you machine wash the fabric at 60 degrees, you wreck them. That's why it's very important to see how practical you can make an interactive t-shirt of this kind and how much people are prepared to pay for it.
Who knows? Maybe one day you'll not only be able to read the words Euromaxx on this coat, You'll be able to watch the entire show on it.
That's unfortunately all we have time for today. Thanks for tuning in. We will be back next week with more, and we look forward to seeing you then. If there's anything you've missed, you can always see today's episode again online, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.